Hey everybody, video here for you today. I have said that almost 2,000 times. I have enjoyed bringing these videos to you over the years. Today's video is going to be a request video. I've had maybe 4 or 6 messages on this place, and I have looked into this, so why don't I make a video on this today. We're going to go down to Lake Delavan in Wisconsin, and it's right down here. Growing up in Minnesota, I am pretty familiar with Wisconsin. My ex-wife's family had a cabin near the Apple River, Balsam Lake area. My son just bought a lake place in western Wisconsin. I hope to get up there one of these days. But this area down here, there was many mounds removed. There was many mounds reported on, but they have pretty much all disappeared today. Disappeared almost as fast as the Packers offense did last weekend. Yeah, I grew up in Minnesota. I'm going to say some things, but it was right down here that some brothers dug into a mound. Interesting findings were made. Reports of large skeletons. Let's just go over to some articles. But it was right down here near Lake Lawn and Assembly Park where reports of these mounds were, and it was right in this area here, from the best I can gather, that these mounds were situated. I have talked to ancient giants during my Ancient America series a handful of times. I think it's a subject that you really cannot ignore just due to all the reports of large bodies being found. Here is one I did last year, Lost History, Ohio, the Giants of Tiny Homer. That was one of my more popular videos from last year. Also did one coming from Huntington, West Virginia, the Dover Mound in Kentucky, a few other places. But this is just a very interesting subject, and I found a good article here, somebody who just wanted to dig into this story and just see what she could find, so I'm going to share this website here. This article came out in 2014, The Ancient Giants at Delavan Lake, and this is written by Linda Godfrey. Let's just read. Here is the Lake Lawn Hotel. I think this comes from 1911. It says, the box ad lay between a charity's plea for donated boats and cars and an announcement for an open house for a senior apartment village. Giant skeletons found at Lake Lawn, it declared right there on page 9 of the May 4, 2014 Walworth County Sunday. Lake Lawn Hotel, 1911. It continued in 1911. The Phillips Brothers uncovered skeletons that ranged from 7 to 9 feet. And 7 to 9 feet, I'm just not sure about that. I have reported on skeletons around 6'10", 7 feet, a little over 7 feet. And that's pretty astounding when burials are found that are that tall, coming from 1,000, 2,000, who knows how long ago. But you just cannot get a concrete, for sure answer on how big some of these skeletons were. It has been reported that there was at least a couple hundred mounds in this area at one time. We've really lost some history down here, and if you live in the area and can contribute anything in the comment section, please do. It was also reported on that in this area, Wisconsin, there may have been as many as a couple 100,000 mounds at one time. Here is a fairly recent article on what took place in 1911, and there is a look at the Phillips Brothers who supposedly made this find. It says considerable interest in many Indian effigy mounds around Delavan Lake took place in 1911 when one of the mounds was excavated at Lake Lawn by the proprietors Ernest F. and Chester W. Phillips. The Delavan Lake area at one time contained one of the largest collections of effigy mounds in southeastern Wisconsin, with many of them concentrated within the site presently encompassing the 17th and 18th holes at the Lake Lawn Golf Course. And is that golf course I showed at the beginning on Google Earth the very same golf course they're talking about here over 100 years ago? Just wondering. And there was also reports of large conical mounds found here. I found that interesting. Those held the Great Lakes copper and other interesting artifacts from all around the United States, but totally lost to history today. It says, during the territorial period, many settlers thought the mounds were built by a mysterious prehistoric race that predated the Indians. Archaeologists later determined that the mounds were created by the descendants of the late woodland Indians during around maybe 1,500 years ago to about 900 years ago. And they were appropriately given the name the moundbuilders. The mounds in Delavan Lake area were created in shapes resembling various animals such as turtles, birds, and panthers. Others were conical. Some were utilized as burial sites, others for ceremonial purposes. It says the lake lawn mounds varied in size. In 1885, Stephen D. Peet, during a 2-day investigation at the lake lawn site, recorded dimensions of 37 mounds, the largest 150 feet in length and 50 feet wide. Most mounds around the lake were about 4 feet high, and those probably held burials in them. It says over the years, trees and other woody plants took root on the mounds, sometimes masking their identity. Most of the Delavan Lake effigy mounds have been destroyed or badly mutilated, although a few remain intact. This article talks about a female skeleton with many shells around the neck area, possibly part of a necklace, and I think that's exactly right. But it says the Delavan Republican, in its March 23, 1911 issue, reported this: the 14 skeletons, upon examination, proved without doubt to be the remains of a powerful prehistoric race. The skeletons appear to be those of warriors of powerful frame and immense size. When compared with the people of this day, the Phillips Brothers are to be congratulated on the initiative and energy in pushing this investigation. I just think the giant subject is a very interesting thing to report on. Were they giants? If a lot of these bodies are reported as tall as the tallest people living today, were they actually giants? Is that sensationalizing it? But we have so many similarities in these reports from all around the country. The artifacts found, how they were buried. Were people making up the same story all around the country? Well, that seems unlikely. You can never prove the motive of somebody writing a story or doing the excavation work, but just a lot of similarities around the country in these stories makes it a very interesting thing to report on, I think. And it goes hand in hand with ancient America because there are so many reports of this stuff. But the New York Times also reported on this. Here it says, the discovery of several skeletons of human beings while excavating a mound at Lake Delavan indicates that a heretofore unknown race of men once inhabited southern Wisconsin. Information of the discovery was brought to Madison today by Maureen Morrissey of Delavan, who came here to attend a meeting of the Republican State Central Committee. Curator Charles E. Brown of the State Historical Museum will investigate the discoveries within a few days. So it seems they were bringing in some people with some reputable titles to them to investigate this. It says, upon opening one large mound at Lake Lawn Farm, 18 skeletons were discovered by the Phillips Brothers. The heads, presumably those of men, are much larger than the heads of any race which inhabit America today. From directly over the eye sockets, the head slopes straight back, and the nasal bone protrudes far above the cheekbones. The jawbones are long and pointed. The teeth in front of the jaw are regular molars. There were also found in the mounds the skeletons, presumably of women, which had smaller heads, but were similar in facial characteristics. The skeletons were embedded in charcoal and covered with layers of baked clay to shed water from the tomb area. That's very interesting. Lake Delavan is fairly close to the site of Aztalan. I made a video about this a couple years ago. Here is what they call the Pearl Princess, buried with thousands of pearl shells from, they think, the Gulf of Mexico. Also, a small stone pyramid was found here, but there has been other reported large skeletons found in the nearby area, Mill Creek, the Lizard Mound site. One of the reasons this story is a little frustrating to report on, there is no pics of the supposed 200 mounds that were down in this area, or of the skeletons or the skulls. But this comes from a long time ago, so maybe that is understandable. But it says, unfortunately, a great number of these mounds were leveled by early settlers in order to clear land for farming, houses, and even from 1850 until almost the turn of that century, winter quarters for members of Maybe's Circus and Menagerie, complete with a ring barn for training horses. Jeremiah Maybe owned the lakeside part of the property, and after he died in 1867, his widow remarried Anna Mary Maybe Phillips, and her second husband, Ernest Field Phillips, built the original Lake Lawn Hotel on that beautiful shore in 1883. So it seems maybe 140 years ago, a lot of these mounds were already lost and destroyed. It said in 1911 there were still some mounds around. A lot of them had been destroyed by treasure seekers and just by progress from farmers and city development. It said in early 1911, the couple's two sons, Ernest and Chester Phillips, decided to see for themselves whether the conical mounds might indeed contain burials and artifacts. They chose a 40-foot diameter mound between the hotel's horse barns and soon uncovered a burial chamber 6 feet below the top of the mound. The chamber measured 7 by 9 feet. Its floor was made of carefully layered gravel, white sand, and blue clay. There was evidence that the top of the chamber had been constructed of a 1-foot layer of dirt topped with fired clay. To the excitement of the Phillips Brothers, this mound did indeed contain burials, 14 of them, several with fractured skulls indicating a violent death. Most of the bodies had been interred lying on their backs with their knees flexed and arms bent upwards, but 2 were buried in a sitting position. So that is very interesting. That has been reported on by a lot of farmers finding that. It says Ernest Phillips submitted a full report of findings to the Wisconsin Archaeological Society on the 21st of that month. A little over a year later, in 1912, the Phillips brothers decided to dig into another mound. This burial contained 1 skeleton in a sitting position, a female and a small child sitting next to it. The remains of a possible clamshell necklace were found beneath the burial. According to a later recap in December 1926, it says the skulls of these burials all had low, flattened foreheads. So what exactly was found at Lake Lawn over 100 years ago? Well, all that time since, the story has just kind of faded into oblivion. There are a few reports on it done every once in a while, but the Phillips brothers seem to be very interested in what they found, and it seemed to correspond with other findings made across the United States. But with a lot of this, all you have is newspaper articles to go on. But I think it's worth reporting. I just find this all very interesting, as I do with many periods of history. Here is one more link I will leave below, the mystery behind the 18 giant skeletons found in the USA. And when looking into giants, you really got to be careful. A lot of these pics are faked, but I have no doubt large skeletons were found. It says when they were uncovered 107 years ago, scientists are remaining stubbornly silent about the lost race of giants found in burial mounds near Lake Delavan, Wisconsin in May 1912. It says the dig site was overseen by Beloit College, and it included more than 200 effigy mounds that proved to be the classic examples of 8th century woodland culture. But the enormous size of the skeletons and elongated skulls found in May 1912 did not fit very neatly into anyone's concept of a textbook standard. Now, just summing this up, I'll just read. It says, it wouldn't surprise me if nothing conclusive about these mounds ever comes to light. For some reason, any evidence of the remains of anomalous human beings seems to disappear into a deep black hole of obfuscation once any sort of established institution gets access to them. Even in 1983, Jim Brandon said of the anomalous bones found in North American mounds, as soon as mound excavations became widespread in the 19th century, these reports began to circulate. It is doubtful, however, if any topic has been more relentlessly suppressed. Part of the reason for that, of course, is the completely understandable outrage that Native Americans feel at seeing burials sacred to them dug up and displayed for all to see. Almost all museums and other institutions that have harbored remains of Native Americans have by now reparated their collections to appropriate tribal entities, or at least some of them have. But beyond that, there seems to be an extra wall of silence regarding the existence of these huge skeletons with the unusual skulls. Thanks to a little investigative work by the author of this article, who I presume is Linda Godfrey, we do know what happened to some of these bones. It says, I do know, thanks to a 2004 interview I conducted with the late Delavan historian Gordon Yedon, that the 2 largest Delavan Lake skeletons were removed from the mound and taken to a house the Phillips brothers owned in the town. The brothers, Yedon told me, coated the bones with shellac to preserve them. After the brothers died, their belongings were auctioned off, but the skeletons weren't part of the sale, said Yedon. No one knows where they went, or if anyone does, they aren't talking. I presume any alleged photos disappeared with the skeletons, so maybe floating around with somebody who's just kind of keeping them. There is a little record of this, but right now it's all disappeared. Then a little later here it talks about representatives of the Campus Archaeological Society at the University of Chicago doing some investigative work on some effigy mounds in the area, but that'll give you a little clue of what happened to some of the bones. They freaking just disappeared. I thought I would report on this today. The Phillips Brothers seemed to find something pretty interesting as far as the burials. How big were they? Well, that's all for speculation. Without any pics, not even any pics of the mounds or diagrams. So that's a little frustrating. I read one article where a guy said in the 1970s, a gentleman still had some of these skulls, but this story has just kind of faded away. So I thought I'd bring it to people's attention today. I want to thank the people who sent me the articles on this story. That is a video on some reported findings made right in this area over 100 years ago. This area, Wisconsin, seems to have some deep history. I have reported on it recently, but that was an interesting one to do. You know, there's a lot of speculation on the size of some of these burials. Some of them were not done by professional archaeologists, but there seems to be a theme of large bodies being found in some of these mounds. Hope you thought that was interesting. You all have a very nice day.